Welcome to Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here is the podcast host, James Delingpole.
Hello, my special listening friend. Welcome to Delingpole, the podcast brought to you by Breitbart and Podcast One, starring me, James Delingpole, and some of my special friends. Well, this week I have a special New Year treat for you. Happy New Year, by the way, for those of you who are actually listening at New Year. Happy Year, those of you who are listening to it later. My guest, he's not a special guest, at his own insistence. It is none other than my brother, Dick Delingpole. And I can't tell you how excited I am about this show. I think it's really, really, really good. And if you think so too, I want you to tell me so on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at James Delingpole, obviously. Or you can tell me by leaving a 5-star review on Apple, or even a 1-star review if you're a poisonous git. I mean, you know, you can earn the right for me to hate you if you want. But I'm hoping you're going to be positive about this show. I love it. And if you want more of this sort of thing, just give me an indication of what it is you like and what it is you don't like. Because obviously, if you encourage me, I will give you more good things. And we'll all be happy together. So, without further ado, here is my guest, Dick Delingpole, on possibly the best Delingpole podcast ever. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Delingpole, possibly the most Delingpole podcast there will ever be, apart from the other ones which are like this. Because my guest, not my special guest, because this is the rule, he's not called a special guest. My guest today is none other than my brother, Dick Delingpole. Dick, welcome to the show, my guest.
Hello, individual listener, which we have established during the year is by far the best way of addressing podcast listeners, and whoever pointed that out to you was quite correct. You listen to a podcast on your own, probably with your headphones on, and you should be addressed as an individual because it's not something you listen to sat round in a group.
Well, you listen to a lot of podcasts, don't you? And how do you listen to them? Because I don't do it much.
Well, some of the youngsters I work with, which is basically everyone except for me, because
anyone under 45, basically.
Way under 45 in the case of most of the people I work with. So I work with a couple of youngsters. I'm a graphic designer and I work with these other graphic designers, and it's all very jolly, and I'm the old curmudgeon. But they like listening to podcasts, and they're big fans of the Adam Buxton podcast, which is kind of gold standard of podcasts. He's been at it for a very long time, and he really is very good at it. He has a lovely, homely way about him. He's very self-effacing, in fact, possibly too self-effacing. He worries way too much what people think, a bit like you.
I do, I care.
You care. He possibly cares even more. And the other one is Athletico Mints, which I can recommend, which is Bob Mortimer's podcast. It is ostensibly about football, but you and I don't know football.
Actually, no, you said that. I actually know a lot about football.
You don't know anything about football.
I've heard of Chelsea.
Well done.
Didier Drogba.
Didier Drogba.
I used to love Didier Drogba. I don't believe he plays for Chelsea anymore. If he does, well, I wouldn't know because I haven't watched
I think we're so out of our depth already.
We are. Let's not go any further.
Let's not go there. But anyway, check out Athletico Mints. It's Bob Mortimer's podcast with some mate of his, but it's completely surreal, and it makes you realise...
Is Mince or
Athletico Mince, Mince,
okay.
like as if it's chopped meat.
Do you think Americans would get it?
Americans definitely would not get Athletico Mints. Although, having written off Americans as the guy, years ago as, oh, those guys don't do irony, they don't do humour, they've put out the best, most ironic, the funniest sitcoms since then. That
South
every time
Park.
we make assumptions about our American friends, that they are confounded. So who knows? They may get it.
Well, Stephen Fry says that, doesn't he? That everything you can say about America that is true, the opposite is true also. They embrace everything.
Yeah. I mean, they still love Monty Python every bit as much as the most avid English Monty Python fan, and they do get it.
Yeah.
So who knows? They might get it. I mean, they get you, don't they?
I don't know. I don't know what the traffic is. All I know is that it's doing quite well, and obviously 2017 is going to be the year of total world domination. for Delingpole.
That's fantastic news.
It is.
I might even get a bit of the sort of the bounce back, whatever it is called.
If I were a tank,
Yeah.
I would almost certainly be a royal tiger, a
Königstiger, king tiger.
Yeah.
Royal tiger.
Yeah, no, I think they're all called royal tigers, aren't
Were they?
they? Yeah. Well, whatever.
Right.
Maybe would I be a Jagdpanther?
Yeah, but the gun's not very manoeuvrable. You can be a hunter-killer, but, do you want to just be a tank destroyer, or do you want full mobility with a moving turret?
You see, there are so many topics we could talk about. This is the problem. I almost think there should be a Delingpole on Delingpole podcast every week, so we could talk about what? We could talk about World War II.
We could do a whole podcast just on tanks. I mean, you had a thread on Twitter recently, didn't you, about is there an escape hatch on a tank? And it was all sparked off by the episode of Walking Dead where he escapes through the hatch underneath, or gets into the tank from the hatch underneath. And it's like, well, would a tank have a hatch underneath? Surely that would weaken the structure for IEDs and things like that. I mean, it is an interesting topic for most blokes, let's face it. I doubt if there's a girl who has ever wasted a moment's thought on that sort of thing. But
I think the number of girl listeners to this show is select, but I have to say, those girls that we do attract to this show are going to be such total quality. I mean, I do love a girl who looks like a boy.
But, I've made a list here about topics we can talk about.
Yes, this is one of the fundamental differences between you and me, and I think we need to establish this. Even though we are brothers, and we have probably more in common than we do with anybody else on Earth.
Yeah.
At the same time, we do have certain differences. The fact that you have made a list of conversational topics for the show, I would never do that because I would be thinking, well, that's time wasted that I could be spent just like staring gormless into space.
Well, on that sort of podcast subject, and the other podcasts I've listened to, apart from listening to all yours from this year, and I do want to go through those ever so briefly, like a review of the year.
Yeah.
One of the ones I listened to was one when you were the subject rather than the interviewer. And it was with, and we've written all this down, Write with Courage, your friend Thor.
Yes.
And it was a lovely interview, and you were being interviewed not as Delingpole, the so-called polemicist or extremist or fascist bastard. It was you as a writer, which was really refreshing, and he was very good interviewer. He steered you back onto course every time he wanted you to stay on the subject of writing. He would ask you stuff like, who has inspired you, and what's the great advice that you've been given? What advice would you give to young writers? And you amusingly said, don't do it. And said, what if they still ask? Well, still don't do it. And then it was, I think, if they're still asking after that, you had to assume that they had no choice but to write. And lovely little things like that. So that was one of the podcasts I wanted to mention. But I started listening to your podcasts quite late in the day. I think you'd done 3 or 4 of them before I even decided that I should give them the time of day. And I listened to them while I...
WTF?
I know. It's a shocking revelation.
I mean, if you won't listen to my podcast instantly...
Well,
Dick.
The thing is, I get the impression I already know what you think, but I'd still listen to them, and I found myself lolling, which is embarrassing when you're sat in an office with headphones on. And there were times when I was actually screaming out loud, James, you can't say that.
Oh, I know.
And when you're in a quiet room...
There were some marmalade dropping moments, weren't there?
Yep. And so let's just briefly go through with them. First off was Katie Hopkins.
Yep.
Now, one of your rather nasty critics on the site, the one who's given you a 1-star rating, which will forever hold back all those 5-star ratings, was saying how you never let her get a word in edgeways. Now, I think, to be fair to this rather nasty person, he was quite right. You were speaking over her a fair bit, although, she's a very opinionated and...
She needs reining in, the Hopkins woman. She can be bloody bossy.
I think it's probably a Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans is what it was.
But one of the things I was going to say was that you had some quality female action during the year. You had some very good female interviewees, and now it's almost as if you were trying to achieve some sort of gender balance, which I know is completely not what you would be about.
I would never do that, Dick. I just like when a chick is good, she is very, very good. I mean, I love women. Hate feminists, and so I suppose I was trying to show not that I'm not a misogynist, but simply to show that women don't have to be stupid feminist cows to be women.
Well, just to go through some of the women that you had on the blog, on the podcast: Katie Hopkins, Claire Fox, Kate Andrews, Isabel Oakeshott. They were all excellent, and it's pretty much half of your podcasts were women, and they, good on you. I know you didn't have to try and do it, but it just goes to show you don't need all female shortlist to sort of.
You don't. My sole criterion was quality.
Yeah, and also what you actually achieved. Looking at this list, you've got people from across an interesting spectrum of things. You've got people from the legal profession. You've got with your rather excellent Gary Bell interview. One cool barrister.
I don't know about cool.
If
you've heard Gary Bell's music collection, he is stuck in. He probably is a George Michael fan, or rather the late George Michael fan. Yeah, he's got terrible sort of music where from the era when they used to play Hi Ho Silver Lining at the end of a party. I don't think his music taste has progressed much beyond that.
You know what though? I think I met Gary in the early years when he was still hanging out with your friends when we went to visit in Bristol.
When he had a moustache,
and he was this kind of odd character. Like, what the hell is he doing there? But he was just learning and biding his time, wasn't he? He was amazing that he then goes on to achieve everything he set out to achieve.
Yeah,
What an example to us all. I mean, what a guy. So obviously, I'm going to go out and buy his book, which I haven't yet. But post Christmas, I will be doing that.
Yeah, Gary Bell's book, by the way. Gary is the lawyer I interviewed who became a football hooligan, and his book is called Animal QC, well worth a read. And another one, Tim Shipman. Did you enjoy that one?
Tim, let me remind myself. Yes, I was fascinated by that because although you know a lot of the top politicians, this guy had an inside view as a political journalist. So he lives and breathes the world of politics. He seemed to have the inside line on absolutely everything, across all the parties. So rather than them being mates of yours who you're either encouraging or a little bit disappointed in, Cameron, he was he had a very balanced inside view. So it was fascinating to get a glimpse of that. So for that, and also he was a very measured, intelligent guy, obviously. So a good one, that.
Yeah, I was shocked reading Tim Shipman's book, whose name will come to me. What was the book called? Anyway, whatever it was called, it was about Brexit. You can look it up. But I thought it was fascinating to realise how many of the stories that you read in the papers about politics are essentially planned by dark arts departments, spin doctors, and so on. You realise that the media is not really free. All these political correspondents, people in the Westminster bubble, are part of this cabal, and it takes a very brave soul, I think, to step outside that bubble. I think Isabel Oakeshott is one of them. She is fearless and doesn't mind upsetting people, but most people in the bubble are rather cowed and anyway.
Well, I think that's possibly one of the themes running through all the people you were interviewing, was that they weren't afraid of the fact that they were trying to expose inconvenient truths, let's call it. Yes. So, Isabel was, again, I've written down my one note here is good inside info. I mean, she wrote that, the book that the whole pig gate with Cameron thing was the takeaway message from that one. But, there was so much more to it than that. And she put her whole reputation on the line for this and got badly pilloried by the same people you're talking about, the media who have an agenda that they don't want anyone to cross.
It's very interesting, just briefly on Piggate, that Isabel, I know Isabel reasonably well, and I do trust her. There are others who say that she's not trustworthy. I don't buy into that. She had this revelation, this anecdote about David Cameron. Was it putting his penis into a dead pig's mouth as part of the
kind that you boys do on a night out,
yeah,
isn't it? I didn't judge him for that, but
no, I didn't either.
As long as the pig's dead and the head is detached from the body.
Yes, and the penis is not erect. It's one of those don't go there moments. But I think any normal person who's been to a university drinking club will have looked at that story.
They get up to a lot worse.
A lot worse. And I think that was the spirit in which she printed that story. And yet it got singled out as the standout story of her book. And it was used to demean her book. And I'm afraid that Cameron himself probably led this. Because Cameron had lots of dark arts spinmeisters. Cameron told Isabel before she wrote the book, he said to her, look, you really shouldn't get into this, Isabel, because we are going to destroy you, or words to that effect. Mm-hmm. So obviously they focused on this story to belittle Isabel, to belittle the rest of the book, because this is how politics works. It's full of very nasty people. And this is why, of course, 2016, we'll come on to this, was such a glorious year, because so many of these scumbags were discomfited and overthrown to a degree.
Well, 2 massive votes that simply weren't meant to happen.
No.
And when the one happened, we couldn't believe our luck. But when the other happened, and all our listeners will know the 2 votes we're talking about, but it was just, things really have turned.
It was the
this
Eurovision
year.
Song Contest, and what was the other one again?
I think it was something to do with the football, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, we won the cup.
Yeah, probably. I
The
bet
football
we did.
cup.
The football cup,
Yes.
yeah, the shiny one. Yeah, so carry on with your praising of my podcast. This is a good theme.
To go back to the original order, it was Katie Hopkins, followed by Claire Fox. Now, Claire, I loved to bits. She was completely unfazed by any of your sort of typical
Even when I said she
Delingpolism.
looks like a lesbian.
All of that. I mean, anyone else should have been sort of horrified and, dropping the mic and walking out, but utterly unfazed by it, and all the better for it. And, an ex-Marxist. And now, something that you've been pointing out to me over the years is a lot of those guys writing on living Marxism, was it?
Yeah.
You met them years ago and you said, I've had this amazing revelation that a lot of these people who call themselves Marxists actually think 90% like me. And
I think the royal family is the 10%. The royal family and probably
the Marxists who don't think like you.
Yeah.
Right.
No. I mean that's the bit. That's the bit that we disagree on.
Oh, I see. Disagreeing on the royal family. I thought you were thinking they were the Marxists.
But pretty much, they're not really Marxists anyway. But yeah, they are great people.
If you go down that route, you end up at libertarianism, and it's essentially a seeking of the truth, even when it goes against the grain of all other politics, be it Lib Dem, Labour, Conservative. You find yourself on the fringes because you realise the utter bollocks that is there in mainstream politics.
Yes.
So I think you both come to the same place through a different route, and this is why Claire Fox was so cool. And she was talking about her experiences talking at schools of talking about freedom of speech, basically, and there were girls covering their ears because they couldn't cope with what they were hearing. She was saying something hugely controversial about rape, which, even mentioning the word rape, a lot of these girls would be covering their ears. I mean, it is a horrific thing, of course, but she was telling them it might not be the worst thing that ever happens to you.
Yeah, that's fair.
And, it's kind of one of those truths that you don't even dare speak, but she was telling them things like that, and one of these fearless people going out, so that she just wants a little bit more truth out there. So she was great. Then you had Gary Bell, you had Tim Shipman, both of whom we talked about. Kate Andrews. Now, she was completely different. She was the young American lady, very intelligent, in a proper grown-up organisation. What was her thing?
The Institute of Economic Affairs. Yeah, Kate's a lovely girl. Americans are quite what's the word? They can be quite demure, quite prim. I mean, when I use the phrase "No, I won't come in your mouth,"
that shocked me. See, well, I said, James, you can't say that.
I can't help
but
being...
It was one of those old gags we had, wasn't it?
Checks in the post. No, I won't come in your mouth. Yeah. But I wasn't trying to be sexist or offensive or anything like that. It's just sometimes bad things come out of me, and it's like Satan. There is the devils that possess me.
I was a bit worried for her because I felt she was probably not robust enough.
I didn't
for
throw her off. She was absolutely fine thereof. She recovered well.
Yeah.
Okay. Charles Crawford, yes.
He was your diplomat, and that was, the diplomatic world. It is a complete mystery to me.
Didn't you love his subtle labyrinthine mind?
Well, this is why diplomats are diplomats, isn't it? I mean, he all the questions he answered were measured and in a diplomatic way.
He was like Littlefinger or something.
Yes, exactly. It was. But if you spend a life as a diplomat, I mean, I suppose by the end of it, that's all you're going to really end up sounding like, isn't it? You are not going to be a James Delingpole, and a James Delingpole is never going to be a diplomat.
No. Well, I think I should be a diplomat. I think I would like to be rearranging our country's affairs in our interests, and I wouldn't take any shit from fucking foreigners. I'll tell you that much.
Well, this is why you and Farage would be
shit diplomats.
Well, I don't know.
It'd be great if we could win.
I think he'd possibly be. No, would he be a better diplomat than you? I don't know. A topic for another day, maybe.
But Dick, I'm now bored with this review of my podcast because we've found the natural.
Time. Yeah. Can we just talk briefly about Sir Tim Ball and how much he suffered for his truth? How much was his lawsuit costing?
Tim Ball, yes, Professor Tim Ball, a Canadian climate skeptic. He's all his retirement money. As we get older, we feel that issue sorely, don't we? Poor man, the evil bastard.
What a hero, though! What a hero!
Yes, good. We're gonna move on to another section now. This is the end of the first segment.
Okay, it's a brand new year, and Podcast One's got a whole bunch of brand new coming your way. We're talking about new shows from Layla Ali, The Forbes Network, NASCAR's Larry McReynolds, Real Housewife Kim Zolciak, amazing scripted series like Murder Made Me Famous, Tori Spelling and Dean McDermott, Richard Marx, Norman Lear, and many, many more. So get on board for 2017 and download the Podcast One app now. That way you can take us with you all year long. Happy New Year from PodcastOne.com.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the most Delingpole podcast ever. That's because this week it features not one Delingpole, but two Delingpoles. One being me, the other being my brother, Dick Delingpole. And it's going really well so far, or I think so anyway. It's like a conversation between brothers. Wouldn't you think so?
It's almost like that. Yeah. And we are pretty much going to run out of time before we run out of topics, sadly enough. But
we can do another one. It
all depends how well down this goes. Yeah. How well this goes down.
Yeah. Right. I like that.
Okay. So I've got a little surprise for you here. I've been putting together a quiz.
Yep.
Now, it's a very simple quiz. I read you a name, and you have got to very quickly say yes or no.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
You want to do this?
Yeah.
Professor Brian Cox.
No.
David Bowie.
Yes.
Brian Blessed.
Yes. Yes.
You're wrong on that one. I'll talk to you about that one later, but he's been spouting a little bit of bollocks lately.
Oh,
I
God.
know. I know. What a disappointment. Richard Branson.
No.
Bob Geldof.
No.
Nigel Farage.
Yes.
Prince Charles.
No.
Prince Philip.
Yes.
Scarlett Moffat.
I don't know who Scarlett Moffat
is. She is the Gogglebox Geordie girl.
Yes, I love Scarlett.
Yes,
and I watched the whole bloody series as well.
She's brilliant. She's fantastic. Harambe.
Yes.
Morrissey.
Yes.
Yes,
Morrissey.
Richard Osman.
Yes.
Yes. Martin Freeman.
No.
Bendy Batch Cumberdict.
No.
Grimes.
Grimes? Yes.
Mark Carney.
No.
Graham Linehan. Do you know who Graham Linehan is?
No, never heard of him.
These two guys who wrote Father Ted, and the good bits
Arthur
were
Matthews.
by Arthur Matthews.
Yes.
But apparently this is
the really
Graham
shit bits.
Linehan
No, never heard of him.
No.
Me.
I don't know why I wrote that down.
No.
Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Kanye West. Strangely
yes.
enough.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, these were some written by my daughter Freya on the way over. Black China. Do you know who Black China is?
I'm going to pretend I do and say yes.
She is one of the Kardashians, apparently.
Is she? Yeah. Oh, I do know who Black China is. Yeah.
She split up with.
Yeah.
But Andrew Lawrence.
Yes.
And my two dogs, Lemmy and Orca.
Nope. They've got to be put down. I'm sorry. Not without reason were they banned from coming here today. Because Actually, I was about to blame somebody else's dog on eating my microphone when I remembered it was my sodding dog that ate the
well,
microphone.
I can see the chunks missing from it as we speak.
The tone,
it looks like you've been munching away at an ice cream, which, of course, would make you gay, wouldn't
it
it?
would make me gay.
Yeah.
Should we talk about that briefly? Richard Hammond from Top Gear has been in trouble for saying that eating ice creams is gay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it is a bit, isn't it? You can't do it and look macho.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
That's enough of that.
Yeah.
I think we've covered that off.
Yeah.
Now, I've got part 2 of the quiz for later on if you like. Can we talk briefly
I enjoyed that quiz.
about whole milk?
Do you know, I think of all the topics that we could have chosen to discuss, be it Vladimir Putin, it be the
Making America Great
Making
Again.
America Great Again, the China, with a China.
Global warming.
Any of these topics, there is nothing that I would care to talk about more than the importance of drinking whole milk rather than frigging, what do the Americans call it, half and half, or semi-skimmed, or even...
Or God forfend, skimmed milk.
Skimmed milk. I hate skimmed milk.
I mean, red,
the
devil's evil milk.
The devil's rancid
Green is
urine.
halfway to evil. Blue is where we want. The colour of the caps, this is.
I like gold.
Well, gold takes it even further, but...
Always believing you are gold.
You can cut that out later. All right, look, back to the milk.
You're indestructible.
You're going Spandau on us,
Okay.
and this is not a good place to go.
Dum.
Obviously, whole milk is awesome. Don't call it full fat. That's playing their game. Call it whole milk. Calling it full fat is doing it a disservice.
It's implying that fat is somehow bad.
Well, certainly the fat that you get from milk, I don't think... It's one of those massive government cons, like margarine, eggs,
there is
all
actually
that stuff. It was bollocks.
There is actually a serious story to this, which we could go on at great length. We're not going to because it's not that kind of show today, but it was about Ansel Keys, that American dietitian in the 1950s, and he was talking arse. And he condemned our mother's generation to a lifetime of margarine and semi-skimmed milk. And even now, even now, schools in Britain are obliged to serve children semi-skimmed, not full-fat milk.
But most
not whole milk.
dietitians would even say you give children whole milk, and it's not until you're older that you need semi-skimmed. It's madness. I mean, they're missing out on so much healthy goodness.
Before she died, the late Clarissa Dixon Wright. Do you remember her?
Mm-hmm,
Two
of course.
fat ladies.
One of the fat ladies.
I loved Clarissa Dixon Wright, and I met her a few times. Once at the very last Waterloo Cup, the very last coursing cup in Liverpool, greyhound coursing, hare coursing.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed the two fat ladies once, and this is one of her bugbears. She pointed out to me that you can't absorb the calcium in milk without the fat. The fat is an important carrier of the... So
a whole generation with osteoporosis thanks to a wonderful government health scheme based on a lie.
By the way, I don't eat Kellogg's since they started
of course not.
boycotting.
It's a
Breitbart
boycott, and I should imagine it's a lot more successful than them boycotting you.
Yeah, although to be fair, the cereals I eat are made by Nabisco anyway. Weetabix,
right?
I like Weetabix.
Mm-hmm.
Shreddies, they're not made by
No.
So my two favourite cereals.
Well, I've been trying to avoid Kellogg's by buying the supermarket equivalents, and they've come on in leaps and bounds recently. So, the supermarket equivalents are just as good these days. I had a boycott of my own this year, a joke one on Twitter, but I tried to keep up with myself. It was Stop Funding Twats, and it was to not eat Walker's Crisps because of Gary Lineker. Yeah. It was a homage to Stop Funding Hate, but it's Stop Funding Twats.
Gary Lineker, Americans should know, he plays what you call soccer. He's a good-looking chap. He was a
England captain.
Already we're straying well out of our depth here.
He played for Leicester City.
How do you know that?
Because Leicester is where Walker's is based. That's how he ended up being their man.
So Leicester was the team that did that amazing thing where they won when they
Against
weren't expected.
all the odds, that sort of thing, yeah.
So I didn't realise they had a history. Okay, so I'm learning football facts here.
So there you go. Anyway, he became the football pundit, match of the day commentator, what have you. But he's just recently gone more and more social justice warrior.
Yeah. Why do
Charlotte
they do this?
Church, the full pack.
Why do some people? Why do they go this way? Why couldn't he just be content to be Gary Lineker, the ex-footballer turned crisp salesman or potato chip salesman, as Americans would call him? Why couldn't he be content with that? And pundit. Why did he have to go full SJW?
Because once you've got the fame and once you've got the fortune, then I think I'll change the world. I think I'll make the world a better place.
Oh my God! Do you think that's why? Is it good for us that we haven't made any money? That we're going to be poor?
I think we would have made the world a better place with unlimited resources. And
you could do that. Some rich people I know, for example, my mate Jim Mellon. Jim's made lots and lots of money, but Jim uses it for good causes. He spends it on... Well, he bought me a bloody nice Hermes tie for Christmas.
That's a good cause.
No, really good cause. And I think people like me, actually, I'm just bringing it around to me for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
People like me get so much shit. We actually deserve love from our side of the argument. One of my great bugbears about having totally ruined my life being a climate skeptic, because I have suffered personally and health-wise for it and everything.
And financially.
Is that I never got any rewards for it.
You know what? I think a lot about this, and I think your time will almost certainly come. But, you probably will be in your 60s, and it will be small comfort to you.
Actually, there is one thing that's going to happen. The Cool Futures hedge fund.
Yeah.
The anti-green, the world's first
the
anti-green.
one you got one share in or something
yeah,
like
you
that.
can look at... Yeah, but I think I might be made a... Well, and actually, I
You
won't...
might become a hedge fund manager.
A director.
Well, there you go.
It might happen. I don't know. This could be the excitement for the new year, and it would actually be payback for all the suffering I've endured.
A small amount.
I'm kind of like I'm like Saint Sebastian. How does that line go? Lucky like Saint Sebastian.
Preferring the ache to the aspirin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
about the arrows on
Momus, wasn't it?
Is it Momus or Momus?
Momus. I don't know. A very, very obscure.
You
80s
made
indie
me
band.
the best. One of my actually, Dick, this was my favourite ever mixtape.
Did I? Is it one I sent out to Africa?
No, not out to Africa. No, it was when I left the Telegraph,
right,
and I went to write my first novel in the south of France.
I made you a mixtape.
You made me a mixtape, and it had "Lucky Like Saint Sebastian" by Momus on it. It had "Ebenezer Good."
Wow.
By the Shaman.
You see, having a wife who worked at the time in a record shop, I had access to some pretty good indie stuff, and I was able to pass on some of that knowledge.
But but isn't it funny that in those days, you see, the kids now have all this. They just have it on the internet.
Oh, you can name any song, and they can be playing it wherever they are, out in a field today, like your boy Jim Ivo just did now. He played a song out in a field on his phone that he just downloaded immediately.
I'll tell you what else is scary about, and kind of annoying about the youth. They don't know they're born. Obviously, they don't know they're born. But boy, all he has to do is sit on the bloody internet, going through Spotify, which I pay for, and he has all the world's albums ever made, pretty much, those that were allowed to be on Spotify anyway, at his fingertips. And because he's that kind of person, he just goes through them. I mean, the other day, we were talking about Joni Mitchell. How is an 18-year-old boy supposed to know about Joni Mitchell? He'd listened to Joni Mitchell's Blue, which I haven't listened to. He knows about Led Zeppelin, he knows about Pink Floyd, he knows about the Smiths, he knows about...
But if you and I had wanted to learn more about Joni Mitchell in the 80s, we would have had to go out and actually physically pay for the vinyl.
Yes, we would.
So, that wasn't going to happen. We had to accept that, she was important and she sounded a bit like this. La, 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 la. That sort of thing.
Which I think she's better than that, wasn't she?
Yeah, at her best.
I've looked at clouds from both sides now. Dick, what was the first single that you bought?
God, I don't know.
I do.
What?
I was setting you up there. It was the Laughing Gnome.
It was the Laughing Gnome, but I think this is where I have to say we had au pairs. I think it was our au pair who bought it for us.
I think... Yeah.
I would have been very, very young.
I think the first...
I remember listening to it again and again and again. Even the B-side. I mean, listening to a B-side was unthinkable for me. But it was this song called "Gospel According to Tony Day."
Now, if Who Wants to Be a Millionaire would still existed,
wonderful. That would be my £1 million.
That would be the £1 million
question.
question. I wonder how many people know that the B-side to "Laughing Gnome" was "Gospel According to Tony Day." I could have got it instantly.
Yeah.
That almost gives us a very neat segue into famous
year of the death of everyone.
Everyone died
Everyone
in 2016.
died. But you know what? As pointed out by our good Twitter friend Will McHobag,
Yes, I love Will McHobag.
As many are going to be dead next year.
As many. Nobody as special as Bowie. He's going to
Nobody
die.
as special. Well, that's it.
I think.
He's gone.
Do you think David Bowie's death was the worst death ever? I mean, apart from obviously loved ones of. But
none have affected me in the same way. I mean, I hear people have died, and I thought, well, obviously it's sad, but I'm not going to pretend I like them any more than I did. But Bowie, I mean, you know what massive Bowie fans we both were, and you know what an important part he played in our childhood. So absolutely, I was affected by that one. I was gutted. I was. In fact, back to our good friend Adam Buxton, he spent 2 podcasts on a morning Bowie rant, and so you know it sent ripples through the thinking world.
There were pieces written by, well, actually, snidey comments written on Twitter by people saying, "Hasn't this gone on long enough? All this fuss about
that was after about 2 days.
Yeah,
nowhere near enough."
I agree that rule applies to everyone apart from David Bowie. I remember, even though you're younger than me, I remember you getting deeper into Hunky Dory, I think, before I did, and you insisted. Is this true, or is this a false memory?
This sounds right.
And I remember sort of being uncertain about some of the tracks in the middle, like
8-line poem and things like that,
and Bewley Brothers and stuff, and you were saying, no, look, first of all, you'll enjoy Life on Mars, get the obvious ones.
And you get drawn in, and then you appreciate the others more. It's like any good album should work, which is why things like Spotify, you're killing the joy of getting into an album and learning the obscure tracks.
I worry that the death of the album, or the near death of the album, has transformed music in a negative way. I think a classic example of this is Hounds of Love. Even though I prefer Never Forever, the singles on Never Forever, Babushka, Army Dreamers and so on. I don't know how you are on Kate Bush, but that's a great singles album. But the glory about Hounds of Love is there's all this weird stuff that doesn't work on its own, but works coherently.
It's pace, isn't it? It's and if you listen to an album in order, there's tracks you look forward to, there's tracks that you know are leading up to the next track, and there's a real joy in listening to an album, and even having to turn that vinyl over. We're sounding really old now, but knowing what was on side A compared to side B, but even listening to it fully through on a CD, you get into the more obscure tracks, and you end up loving them more than the singles. So now what you've got with Spotify is essentially turning every band into a greatest hits band, and you just don't want that. No,
and also technology has made. Robert Colville mentioned this in his book that there are now these whole departments dedicated towards making pop as perfect as it possibly could be. I mean, I like some of this stuff, like Alarm. You know, there goes the alarm, da, 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 ringing in my head. Da, da, da.
Oh,
I love these earworms, but there has to be more than that. Pink Floyd, Atom Heart Mother, that whole instrumental track. Well, it lasted about half an hour.
Yeah.
You'd never get that on an album now.
No.
People don't have the attentions. People don't smoke enough fucking weed. That's the other problem, of course.
There is very little weed smoking going on, but I don't know whether that's just because I now live in rural. Well, it's not rural. I live in Worcester, but neither of us live in London anymore.
I worry
it might be that
the kids aren't taking enough drugs.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, the drugs that are out there for them are a lot of skunk and stuff like that. Nasty stuff. Would you wish that on anyone?
Well, I speak to younger people, and they seem to be quite happy with skunk. I think it's bad. Let's just briefly cover the other people who've died, because we've got to make a list. Lemmy.
Let's not forget Lemmy early on in the year.
Just make it nuggetry. Your comments on Lemmy.
Lemmy.
You named a dog after him.
Leonard Cohen. It was very sad, but
I went to stay when I went to my first trip to New York. I went to stay in the Chelsea Hotel because I remember you were in the Chelsea hotel and giving me head on the unmade bed, which is apparently about Janis Joplin. I got the name wrong. I wrote a piece about it in the Spectator, and of course everyone hates you if you get the.
Oh no!
I said it was Joni Mitchell or something, and everyone hates you so much. But you toss these things off
Joplin
very quickly in response to somebody's death. Anyway, I went to the Chelsea hotel. It was really seedy, and the bed, the sheets were made of polyester. I didn't like that at all.
No.
Okay.
Prince earlier on in the year as well, that bizarre death, unexpected because he was rather young.
I got a lot of opprobrium and hate about that because I said that he makes girl music. No real man I know likes Prince. It's just rock for girls.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes, Jeremy Jones is weird though.
The exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
Greg Lake.
That is my second favourite Christmas song after Fairy Tale of New York.
Yeah,
almost my favourite.
Fair enough. Yeah,
I like the kind of the sort of the lush sort of the sort of overproduction almost. It's like prog, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they were prog, weren't they? And George Michael. Let's just round off the musicians. Everything that needs to be said about him has pretty much been said over these last few days.
I wasn't a fan of his music, not even of that Faith.
Everyone
album.
else suddenly is.
Yeah, but everyone is when somebody dies. But what a top bloke!
What
we
a top
hear
bloke.
all these stories about
we're finding more and more things out about from Richard Osman, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, on to the other.
The ones we could think of. I mean, there are many more than this. We're not going to go because obviously it'll be a very long podcast.
We've done Alan Rickman.
I knew Alan Rickman a bit. I interviewed him, and I used to bump into him in Margaret Howell. It was our favourite clothes shop. He used to get his clothes shop from Margaret Howell. Yep.
A.A. Gill, tragically
young. Well, I mean, in my book, young. He was 63 or something.
Right.
And also, when one of your own goes, he was a bit of a ledge, and oh no, yes, it makes me think of my mortality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Ronnie Corbett, a major feature of our youth as far as cosy comedy on TV, family around the TV of a Sunday.
The two Ronnies. I went to interview Ronnie in his later years, and I was completely bowled over by him. He was a very funny, likeable man, and I'm sorry he's gone. And I'm very sorry all the other ones have gone whose names we can't remember or haven't time to mention. Okay. Now, this is the end of this section with me, James Delingpole, and my brother Dick Delingpole.
NBC's new Celebrity Apprentice hits the air this week, and two Podcast One stars are major players. MMA legend Chael Sonnen and boxing royalties Layla Ali. Check out both of their podcasts to hear what's really happening in front of and behind the cameras. Download You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen and Layla Ali Lifestyle now on the Podcast One app, or you can subscribe to them on iTunes or at podcastone.com.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the special podcast with my guest, not my special guest, Dick Delingpole. Dick, your surname, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it comes from de la Pole.
Really?
Yeah. How about yours?
That sounds... Funnily enough, I like to think that my surname too comes from de la Pole. It gives me a kind of...
Which makes us Plantagenet royalty.
Does it?
So, we'll get ours one
day.
There
was a prince in Wales, Owain de la Pole, who was Prince of Gwent.
I wouldn't mind a chunk of Wales.
I'd like to be a Welsh chieftain. That would be good.
We're both big fans of Wales.
Yeah,
it has to be said.
We like Wales. Yeah, Bronny Orr, or however you pronounce the Led Zeppelin song.
And of course, the fact that they voted Brexit.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Although you can't blame them. It is kind of a socialist state, Wales. Mm-hmm. I mean, a god-awful place to have to live permanently. I mean, if you ever had to use the Welsh Health Service, as our poor old sister does, I mean, that would be that would be god awful, wouldn't it?
No, it wouldn't be great. I mean,
It's like living in the Deutsche Demokratische Republic or something like that.
The small compensation is the beauty of the place, but
those bits that haven't been carpeted in fucking wind farms.
You'd get over that pretty soon if you're in their health service. Anyway, I've decided that because the quiz was such a big hit in the first.
I love that quiz. That was almost the best thing I've ever done on this show.
Okay,
ever.
well, I've got a TV version of it. Okay, so it's a simple thing. I read out the name and you say yes or no, and then I tell you whether you're right or wrong. Okay. It's going to start with some really easy ones, and then we'll get some more complicated ones. So, Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Westworld?
Oh my god. I think of the 10 hours of life I wasted on that bastard. It was only worth it for the scene where he shags the beautiful on the train.
Don't agree on everything. I'm an absolute Westworld addict.
Have you got to the end?
Yes, absolutely.
And you thought it was worth it?
Yeah.
It was a complete shaggy dog story.
No. I think you're wrong. But you're looking at me like
you are a man of great patience.
How could I have been talking to you for this past hour?
I definitely would, though, with the blonde.
Well, absolutely.
Dolores.
Even if you knew she was an android.
Oh, God, especially.
Especially.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's the future anyway. We might as well get used to it now.
Let's hope we're still around for it.
Yeah.
Walking Dead.
Yes. Although... Can I tell you
it has its moments, it has its down moments where you think, "Why am I bothering?"
But Dick, you are way ahead of me.
I'm up to date.
I only caught up with significant chunks of Walking Dead when I had my terrible my hunting accident early this year, and I was in bed recovering, first of all from my broken ribs and collarbone, and then from my pulmonary embolism, and I recuperated by watching Walking Dead, and I got to the bit just before Terminus, and then recently I watched Terminus, and then the episodes after Terminus are really quite boring.
This is the thing about Walking Dead. A lot of it is set, scene setting for future episodes, and it's all important stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
It's like the lesser listened to tracks on albums. It's all about pace.
Okay.
Luther.
Don't know anything about
You
it.
see, I only discovered Luther recently,
Okay.
but really, give it a go. It's brilliant.
Okay.
Banshee.
Never heard of it.
Again, you got to check it out.
It's
uber
about a
violent.
banshee?
It's about a crim who masquerades as a cop in a small town city, and he just loves a fight.
Okay.
It's good. A heck of a lot of sex. A heck of a lot of violence. Young Pope.
I loved La Grande Bellezza. I have never seen... I mean, polished wank is what I would call it. Is there something I'm missing? Is something I'm missing?
Polished wank
beneath
is
that
good.
layer of shimmering polished wank. Is there perhaps some sort of depth? Like
I made it through one episode and I realised polished wank was about as much as I was going to get out of it. So there you go. First dates.
Oh, I love
first dates.
I
don't you?
love first dates.
First dates
Do you love
is
first dates?
It's the sort of thing you can't believe. If someone described it to me, I'd say, no, you know
Describe
what?
it to
I'd
people
rather. It's a restaurant set up just for filming purposes, essentially, where a very affable French maitre d' welcomes
like you,
people.
He reminds me of you.
I wish he is lovely.
He's lovely.
Where this charming, affable French maitre d' welcomes couples on blind dates, and they've been paired up by, I don't know, some sort of algorithm or someone around a table to make for good TV viewing, but also hopefully for a genuine, good first date. And some of them work really well, and some of them are disastrous. Some are straight, some are gay, and it just.
But not in a kind of PC way. You're not sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, why have they got that disabled person? This is pure tokenism."
It shouldn't work, but it really does, and you're rooting for them, or you're not, or you're thinking, "Oh, well, this is never going to work," and it does. It's great TV.
Do you remember the episode where the thing they had in common was that they both like pugs?
Now, part of the shtick of this program is that, they've got to find out that one thing they have in common. It's not a set rule, but it is the thing that the producers have said, these two are going to gel. Once they discover pugs, that's going to be it. And they discovered the thing was pugs, and it was like, well, I still don't like you.
Yes.
So that was good for the fact that it was an utter failure. Anyway, moving on. Gogglebox.
Yeah, I quite like Gogglebox.
What about the old socialist teacher, though, or whatever he's called?
I haven't noticed him. Maybe I just edited him out.
It's an old couple, and they're both retired teachers, and he's got the left-wing view on.
If I'd known they were retired teachers, I would not watch the programme. I can't stand retired teachers, left-wing ones.
No,
they're just the worst. They should be. I don't know.
I'm just getting antsy now, thinking about it.
Giles and Mary. We like Giles and Mary. Yeah.
Going back at possibly a year, Les Revenants.
Les Revenants. I mean, it's got the Mogwai soundtrack, and can I tell you, when I did that BBC Arts Review programme, and the last dying days, I used to love doing that show.
And they had Mogwai in the studio.
They had Mogwai in the studio, and I was
what a
there,
treat.
and they were playing music from Les Revenants.
Brilliant.
What's it called in English?
The Returned.
The Returned, yeah. But okay, first series great.
Well, this was my next one.
Okay,
Les Revenants 2.
Les Revenants 2. I did not even get past the first 5 minutes.
Man, it was a load of bollocks.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, please, this is like pulling the remaining teeth that are left after the first episode.
They had every opportunity to take time off, to think about it and make it go somewhere, and they no.
It didn't. Okay, Stranger Things.
I love Stranger Things.
I think it was worth getting. What was it on? What new
Netflix.
network? Netflix for just on its own, which I didn't. I was on it on a borrowed.
I hope you didn't pirate it.
I didn't pirate it, but I think Freya had a temporary contract.
Well, the kids are
on
quite
it.
good at that pirating
Yeah,
stuff.
well,
yeah.
The Hobbit. That's just a straight
One
no.
of
by the way,
the great films ever made. What I liked is the way that they stretched out the storyline into not one, not two, but 3 films.
3 overlong films,
Overlong films.
replete with ludicrous CGI.
Do you know what I'd love to see?
What's that?
The director's cut.
Oh. Apparently there is a fan version, I'm told by a friend on Twitter, that is an edited down version of all 3 that makes reasonable viewing.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, now a little one we had on the way down just to round things up was Mrs. Brown's Boys. I hear you're a big fan of that.
It's really funny, and when I see it, I'm sure I'll have this confirmed. I've heard it's right up my street.
Right, that was that one then.
That was good. I don't want to do any more conversation. I just want lists where I can say yes or no.
Lists are good, but we are turning a bit into what's that awful website that just does lists?
BuzzFeed.
That's the one.
Shitfeed.
Yeah.
But BuzzFeed would be good if it wasn't so stupid and left wing.
Yeah, and it's masquerading as journalism.
Yeah, I know. It's fake news.
Fake
There
news.
is so much fake
There
news
is a lot
around.
of fake news around.
Is it not a classic case of... Well, I don't want to get too serious, but is it not a classic case of lefty projection? This idea of that somehow the right only wins by brainwashing people with fake news.
But they really believe it.
They do.
And it's another one of those things when the right will turn around and say, guys, it's you with the fake news. And they'll say, oh, no, I think you'll find all the fake news has been right-wing fake news. It's ludicrous.
What would be the kind of TV or movie equivalent to what's happened to the leftists this year that they can't cope with? Are we like the Walkers? Is Trump and Brexit, is that like The Walking Dead? Or what? I don't want to be The Walking Dead necessarily. But what are we? We're some terrible thing. No, we're not. We're better than Salem's Lot, aren't we? We're not like vampires.
I think it's possibly going to be more a Game of Thronesy scenario. But I think we could probably find a role for ourselves if you want to torture this analogy into TV.
I do. I'd rather I'd prefer a heroic role if I could.
Yeah, but in Game of Thrones there are no completely heroic roles, are there? No. Everyone is flawed, and no one is completely
apart from
flawed.
The imp.
Yep. Or Ramsay Bolton. He's lovely.
Do you know, I've forgotten who Ramsay Bolton is.
The Flayer.
Oh, yes, sorry, right.
He's the one with absolutely no redeeming qualities.
Sorry, yes.
The bastard of Bolton.
I see what bastard of Bolton. But, so, are we like the White Walkers?
What is we in this scenario?
Well,
you and me as brothers, or us as
I'm
Brexiteers?
just trying to think that the left is going to have... I think probably for the rest
if
of our lives...
winter is coming,
yeah.
And we are winter, then we are indeed the walkers. We're probably the particularly cool ones in the icy armour on the skeletal horses.
With sort of opaque eyes.
Opaque eyes and interesting staves with things on them.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
And what are our swords are pretty cool, aren't they?
They're the swords of truth and justice.
We are the White Walkers. That's it. That's fucking great. Okay, cool. So we've got a tiny section of the show left. We were interrupted there, by the way, because I'd forgotten that I was doing my weekly Tuesday interview with the Garrison show out of Indianapolis. But anyway, here we are back. Me and Dick Delingpole. And Dick, what do you want to talk about for the very last bit?
Well, we can round things up by talking about what we think next year, 2017. What we think next year, 2017, will hold for some of the important things that have been started this year, like Brexit. Now, unlike you, I did actually get involved in politics proper. I've stood for council for UKIP 3 times, I think it is, in Worcester. Failed every time, of course, but that's not the point when you're in UKIP. Being in UKIP is always going to be swimming against the tide. But
hang on a second. Didn't you get in trouble once? With the newspapers about UKIP.
Hitlergate.
Hitlergate. Were you not actually a member of the Nazi?
An old photo of me and Hitler emerged, and the local newspaper put it on the front page, and every paper had it. And it was quite embarrassing because I didn't know anyone had known about my
your Nazi past.
My Nazi
but
past.
Is it not true that it wasn't just one of you, but like loads of you?
I had at that time been cloned several times, but obviously by a Nazi experiment. And
boys from Brazil.
I was actually they based that on me.
Did they?
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
So all this came to light, and my political career was sunk. I could be leader of the Worcester City Council right now had that not happened.
Wow.
I know, shocking, isn't it? Anyway, I had this proper involvement with proper local politics, and it's fun to a degree, and you get to meet all the people who do politics, and so in that capacity, I met the great and the good of UKIP, and I voted for and was pleased to see win Paul Nuttall for our new UKIP leader, and he's been getting a lot of stick on Twitter from some of the more extreme parts of the party. I don't know, are we all extreme or none of us extreme? But he is the real deal. I just wanted to get that out. He is a fantastic guy, and he's a proper, intelligent, lovable Scouse guy. He is going to absolutely walk all over the north. He's going to steal Labour votes left, right and centre.
Well, the Scouts, I mean, your car's going to be on blocks, isn't it?
There's going to be intimidation, there's going to be AAA. But no, he's... people are saying, we don't need UKIP anymore, that, job's done. That
it ain't.
It ain't over till it's over.
Hold their feet to the fire.
Absolutely need UKIP now more than ever. And
because actually, hasn't the Tory party actually continued its centrist, leftist drift under Theresa May? She's not really. She's
this
continuation.
Is what it all
Cameron.
boils down to, isn't it? I mean, she's kind of to some degree playing her cards close to her chest, but every time you do catch a glimpse of those cards, you realise actually they're not necessarily falling in our favour.
She hasn't got 4 of a kind. She's just got a really crap hand. She's bluffing, and it's shit.
Yeah.
And
2 pairs.
Yeah. No, not even a pair. Actually. Yeah.
So just to say, I suppose it makes it slightly more serious than the rest of this conversation has been. But we've really got to watch ourselves for how Brexit could be robbed from us.
That's going to be the bad thing. I think this is going to be the enduring disappointment of 2017. I think the enduring joy of 2017 is going to be the ongoing vampire scream of the left as it squeals like a stuck pig. The butthurt left, as the White Walkers, continuing our earlier theme, overwhelm them. It'll be like that, like the very first scene in Game of Thrones where they're wandering in the woods and it's horrible.
Well, no more wandering in the woods for us. We are out across the wall now. That is where it's at.
Yeah,
that is what Brexit was. It was the White Walkers breaking through the wall.
We are through the wall.
Yeah,
we were looking for that analogy, and
we got it. We got there in the end.
Aren't we going to go on the land where it's all hot?
Aren't we going to find it unpleasant?
Yes.
I think we're going to bring coldness with us.
Oh,
winter is coming.
You make it so easy.
But I don't want to make out that this is a bad thing that's going to be happening.
No.
Winter has its benefits.
Yes, exactly. It does.
Very pretty.
Skiing.
Robin
redbreasts.
Yeah. Hot toddies and snowflakes on noses.
and kittens in
mittens,
and
all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. Yeah, and the Cresta run.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
So happy days ahead. I mean, I think there's enough good people out there to make it work and to hang, draw, and quarter those who stand in our way.
Can I just say that I think that what will make up for the endless disappointment of Theresa May's ongoing failure to enact Brexit,
and a hard Brexit at that, the harder the better.
We don't even talk about soft Brexit.
Brexit was invented by the BBC.
Is like
Brexit is no Brexit.
It's like, it's not even a trouter, is it?
No, it's a limp, sad-looking thing that's
shriveled. It's what's it called
when you've drunk
no one. When you've drunk too much beer and you can't. It's going to be like that.
It's almost inverted.
It is. Yeah. But what's going to make up for that inverted, flaccid, turgid, whatever, is going to be Donald Trump. Who's going to be like an enormous erection, striding across the world, just like proud, erect, magnificent,
impressing everyone.
Yeah, he's going to be. I mean, he is a penis. He is a bit of a dick, but he's our kind of dick, your kind of dick, Dick Delingpole. And
I can see where you're going with this. We're all dicks.
We're all dicks. It's going to be great, and I think, you know what? I think that is the perfect note on which to end possibly the best podcast ever. Thank you to my guest, Dick Delingpole. Thank you to you, special individual person.
Listener.
Thank you, listener, individual. We only care about you, nobody else, just you.
Just you. Look around you. We don't care about them, just you.
Yes. Thank you for listening. You were listening to me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Podcast One and Breitbart on my show, Delingpole, starring my guest, Dick Delingpole. I really appreciate you for being here and sitting with me in this happy moment with my brother on this show. I hope you enjoyed it. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
My name is Anthony Ponce, and I used to be a reporter on NBC. But I got tired of being part of traditional news media, so I quit that job and became a Lyft driver. And now I interview whatever passengers end up in my backseat. So if you want to hear the best stories that real people tell me when we're driving around the city, check out my podcast. It's called Backseat Rider on podcastone.com, the Podcast One app, and iTunes.